The wind screamed across the wide emptiness of Silver Pine Ridge, rattling the bare branches like warning fingers tapping at the windows. The old Ellington homestead had always creaked on stormy nights, but tonight, the house felt different tense, as if it knew something terrible was about to happen inside its walls. I felt it too. Even before anyone spoke, something heavy lived in the air. My husband Harold lay in the parlor, surrounded by wilted winter flowers and the faint smell of cedar from his handcrafted coffin. The mourners had left hours ago. Only the dim lamps flickered now, casting long, strange shadows that stretched across the wooden floor like reaching arms. I stood alone beside him, whispering the last words I never got to say when he was still breathing. "I'm trying," I murmured. "I'm holding on like you asked me to. But I should have known some storms don't wait for you to prepare." I heard footsteps behind me, slow and deliberate. My son Lucas. For a moment I hoped he had come to sit with me, to mourn, to remember his father. But when I turned around, the sorrow on his face was gone. In its place was something cold, something sharp. His wife Sabrina hovered behind him, arms stiffly crossed, lips tight with irritation rather than grief. "Mom," Lucas said, not with the softness he once used as a boy, but with a tone that sliced straight through the quiet room. "We need to talk." I held his gaze. "About what?" He didn't hesitate. "About you leaving." The room tilted. "Leaving?" I repeated. "Tonight?" "Yes," Sabrina answered before he could. Her voice was smooth but threaded with something bitter. "This house, our house, has been suffocating with all the old stuff. We need space to start over." I blinked at her. "This isn't your house." "It's..." But before I could finish, Lucas stepped forward. He didn't raise a hand gently, didn't cushion the words. He delivered them like a verdict. "This isn't your home anymore, Mom. Get out." For a breath, the world stopped. The clock on the wall ticked, but the sound felt distant, drowned beneath the roaring in my ears. I searched his face, my son. The boy who once built pinnacone forts in the yard. The boy I had worked 2 jobs to put through school. The boy I had carried through heartbreaks, illnesses and failures. But now he looked at me like a stranger. "No," I whispered. "Not tonight. Not after." He cut me off with a sudden, violent motion. A sharp crack split the room. His hand. My cheek. The sting bloomed across my skin, but the pain was nothing compared to the disbelief that hollowed my chest. Sabrina's smirk flickered quick, satisfied, cruel. I didn't cry. Not a single tear fell. My heart folded in on itself, but my face stayed still, frozen in something stronger than grief. "You heard me," Lucas said, voice low, shaking with anger he couldn't even justify. "Pack your things, leave." I turned numbly, feeling the warmth fade from my cheek as I walked toward the hallway. My suitcase, the one I hadn't unpacked since Harold's final hospital stay, still leaned beside the coat rack. I took it by the handle. I didn't take my keepsakes, my photo albums, or Harold's old carved figurines. But I did take something they never even thought about. The mortgage folder, tucked deep inside the cedar drawer of Harold's desk. The one with my name on every page. The one they didn't know existed. Outside, snowflakes drifted from the dark Wyoming sky, landing softly against my coat as I stepped into the cold. The door slammed behind me. But the story of that house was not finished. Not even close, because the storm they started tonight was nothing compared to the one I was about to unleash. What secret did Mara take with her? And why did Harold warn her before he died? The taxi that picked me up from Willowbend Road smelled faintly of peppermint and old leather. The driver, a grey-bearded man in a flannel jacket, glanced at me through the rearview mirror when I slid into the back seat. His eyes lingered on the redness blooming across my cheek. But he didn't ask. Maybe he didn't need to. In small towns like Red Cedar Hollow, people could recognize pain the way farmers recognized weather. They didn't need words to name it. "Where to, ma'am?" he asked softly. "Bridgecrest Apartments," I whispered. He nodded, put the car in gear, and didn't speak again. The snow fell heavier as we drove, swirling in frantic spirals that blurred the streetlights. I watched the Ellington homestead shrink into the distance through the fogged glass. It had never looked so quiet, so dim, so emptied of every memory Harold and I had tried to keep alive. The house that once echoed with laughter and burnt toast mornings now sat dark and rigid like a stranger guarding secrets it no longer honored. I pressed a hand to the folder in my lap, the plain brown binder Harold and I had kept locked away for years. They thought it was worthless paper. They thought I was powerless, but they were wrong on both counts. Not inside that folder lay every mortgage slip, every renewal document, every notarized page that tied the property to both Harold Ellington and me. My signature was not an afterthought, it was foundational. Without me, the homestead was a ship without a captain. And once Harold passed, control shifted entirely. Lucas never read any of it. Sabrina never bothered. They just assumed Dot, but Harold-wise, steady Harold had known better. I checked into Bridgecrest Apartments under the warm fluorescent lighting of the front desk. The receptionist, a tired-looking woman with messy curls, offered me tea and blankets, but I declined. Comfort felt foreign. Safety, even more so. Inside the tiny single room, I sat on the edge of the neatly made bed. The heater clicked and groaned, filling the space with a lukewarm hum. My cheek throbbed. My heart didn't. Not anymore. I opened the folder slowly, the papers crackling like brittle leaves beneath my fingertips. Every page was a memory, some good, some painful, but all of them proof. Proof that the home was as much mine as Harold's. Proof that Lucas had no right to drive me out. Proof that Harold expected this day to come. And tucked near the back, sealed in a yellowing envelope, was the letter. Harold's handwriting curled across the front. For Mara. Only open if he forgets who you are. My throat tightened. I hadn't opened it the day he gave it to me. I'd promised him I wouldn't, not unless things turned truly dark. Tonight, darkness knocked me out of my own front door. With trembling fingers, I slit the envelope open. His words spilled out like a voice I could still hear. My Mara. If you're reading this, I'm gone. And if you're holding this letter because Lucas has pushed you aside instead of holding you up, then I am more sorry than any man deserves to be. But I know our son. I know the parts of him that grew away from us. And I know what could happen when grief twists a person's heart. So I prepared something to protect you. My breath hitched. There's a clause in the supplemental will we drafted. A clause that gives you absolute control of the estate if Lucas ever turns cruel. Use it. Don't let guilt silence you. You carried this family longer than anyone else ever has. You deserve peace, real peace, not just survival. A tear finally slipped down my cheek, not from Lucas's slap, but from the weight of Harold's tenderness. His belief in me, his clarity when mine had dimmed. At the bottom of the letter, he wrote, "If he hurts you, take back what is yours. You were the backbone of this home. Let the world remember that." I folded the letter carefully and placed it back in the folder. Then I picked up my phone. The snowstorm raged outside, lightning splitting the sky in thin white branches. The world felt raw, unsettled, almost expectant. I dialed the number for Silverpine Federal Credit Union. When a voice answered, I said the sentence that would start everything. "This is Mara Ellington. I need to make a change to the mortgage account. What happens when the bank discovers Mara's name still controls the entire property?" The morning after the storm, the snow on the sidewalks of Red Cedar Hollow had hardened into a sheet of glittering ice. The air bit at my cheeks as I walked towards Silverpine Federal Credit Union, clutching the brown folder to my chest like armor. I had barely slept. My mind replayed Harold's words over and over. If he hurts you, take back what's yours. The sliding doors opened with a soft hiss, warm air rushing over me like a wave of artificial comfort. Inside, the lobby was clean and quiet, filled with the muted tapping of keyboards and the faint scent of pine-scented cleaner. A young banker with auburn hair looked up from her desk, surprised to see someone enter so early. "Good morning," she said with a polite smile. "How can I help you?" "I need to speak with someone about the Ellington mortgage," I replied. Her smile faltered slightly as she gestured toward a glass office in the corner. "Of course, ma'am. Please wait just a moment." I watched her walk briskly to the office, whispering to a woman dressed in a charcoal blazer, Nora Briggs. Her name tag read. The banker nodded, then approached me with a calm, practiced expression. "Mrs. Ellington? Please come in." Inside the small office, sunlight filtered through blinds, striping the desk with pale lines. I laid the folder gently in front of me. Nora folded her hands and greeted me with the kind of cautious professionalism used when dealing with something delicate. "How can we assist you today?" I drew a steady breath. "I want to revoke authorization for the automatic mortgage payments connected to the Ellington homestead." She blinked. "You want to stop the payments?" "Yes," Nora typed quickly, her eyes scanning the computer screen. After a moment, she looked up, stunned. Double quotes, "Mrs. Ellington, the loan is co-owned. You're listed as a full borrower, not just a spouse. You have the legal right to make any changes you see fit." "I know," I said softly. Her surprise shifted into something like admiration. "Most families don't keep paperwork this organized." She tapped the monitor. "Your signature is on every document from the initial loan in 1989 through every renewal. The house legally can't function without your approval." A sharp, quiet satisfaction pulsed through me. Not vengeful, just certain. Harold had known exactly what he was doing. "I want all future payments paused immediately," I continued, "and ensure no one can reactivate the account without my written consent." Nora nodded, her voice firm. "I'll place a security lock on the mortgage. Only you can unlock it." As she printed the confirmation forms, something inside me steadied like a spine straightening after years of bending. When she slid the papers across the desk, she added gently, "Are you sure about this? It will create complications for the other residents of the home." I looked her squarely in the eye. "They created the complications. I'm just responding." Her mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but an acknowledgement. She stamped the forms, then said, "It's done." Just like that. Decades of sacrifice reclaimed in minutes. I walked out of the bank feeling the cold morning air differently sharper, almost sweet. Snow crunched under my boots as I headed down the street, each step feeling more solid than the last. For the first time since Harold died, my breath didn't tremble. Back at Ridgecrest Apartments, I set the folder on the small table and poured myself a cup of tea. The steam rose gently, curling like soft smoke. For a long time, I just sat there, listening to the hum of the heater, replaying the sound of Lucas's voice ordering me out of my own home. Would he know yet? Had the bank called? Had Sabrina's perfect little plans already begun to crack? I stared out the window, watching a single crow land on the branch of a snow-laden pine. Some storms come quietly at first. My phone buzzed suddenly on the table. Unknown number. My pulse steadied. I already knew who it be. I lifted the phone to my ear. "Mom?" Lucas's voice trembled. "What did you do?" What will Mara say when her son finally realizes the house is slipping through his fingers? For a moment I didn't answer. I simply let Lucas's voice tremble through the phone speaker, thin and unsteady like a loose thread unraveling in real time. Mom, please, are you there? I finally inhaled, slow and even. I'm here. A shaky exhale came from the other end. They sent a notice. Something about missed payments. About the mortgage being in default. I don't understand. His words tumbled out in fragments as if confusion were hitting him like waves he couldn't outrun. I didn't speak. He continued, voice cracking. I tried calling the bank. I tried fixing it. They said I'm not authorized to do anything. They said only you can. Mum, what's going on? Outside my window, a gust of wind swept across the apartment building, rattling the ice-coated gutters. The world felt perfectly, eerily still. I lifted my teacup to my lips, letting the warmth steady me. Then I said quietly, I just did what you told me to do, Lucas. What? His voice tightened. You said it wasn't my home anymore. So I acted accordingly. The silence on the other end was loud, heavy, disbelieving. I could almost picture him in the remodeled living room, pacing circles on floors he thought he owned, running a frustrated hand through his hair, while Sabrina stood nearby with her stiff, irritated posture. Finally, he whispered, Mom, I didn't mean it. It was the funeral. I was grieving. I wasn't thinking. You were thinking enough to slap me, I replied, my tone unshaken. Another silence. A longer one. Mom, I'm sorry, he stammered. I know I shouldn't have. I lost control. But we can fix this. Just, please turn the payments back on. The bank said we have a deadline. 15 business days before they start foreclosure proceedings. That's barely anything. His panic seeped into every word. I could hear the frantic breaths, the way his emotions spiraled with desperation. For so many years, every time he panicked, I soothed him. Every time he stumbled, I steadied him. Every time he made a mistake, I softened the consequences. But this time, the consequences were his own making. I can't fix this for you, I said gently. What do you mean you can't? His voice suddenly sharpened, fear ripping through it. You won't. You mean? Why are you doing this? It's just money. It's not about money. I cut him off before he could twist the truth again. It's about what you chose to do to me. I was upset. He snapped. People say things when they're upset. I didn't think you'd take it literally. Why are you being so careful? I asked. Structured? Prepared? He fell silent again. I continued, my voice calm, almost soft. Your father prepared all of this, Lucas. He saw the way things were shifting long before I did. He made sure I'd be protected. What? Lucas breathed. Dad? What does Dad have to do with this? Everything, I answered. I heard him swallow hard, the sound sharp and desperate through the phone. Mom, what are you saying? What did he do? I didn't answer directly. Not yet. Instead I said, you should read the will, Lucas. The supplemental one. The one he signed years before he passed. His breath hitched. I didn't know there was another will. Of course you didn't, I replied. You never asked. The weight of the truth pressed through the phone line like a stone sinking into water. Mom, he whispered, voice breaking. Please don't let us lose the house. I closed my eyes briefly. The image of Harold signing that supplemental will flickered through my memory. His hands thin, his eyes determined, his voice gentle as he told me, this is not punishment. It's protection. I'm not doing this to hurt you, I said. I'm doing this because you already hurt me. A soft, strangled sound came from Lucas, half sob, half disbelief. The line stayed quiet for several seconds before he managed. "Can we talk? In person? Please? Just meet with me. Tonight. I'll come anywhere." I exhaled slowly. "Fine," I said. "Tomorrow morning. Neutral ground." "Where?" he asked, breathless. I looked out the window at the falling snow, the wind curling around the building like a warning. "The community room at Pinecrest Library." "Okay," he whispered. "I'll be there." But as I hung up the phone, I felt no relief. Because I knew something he didn't. He wasn't the only one who'd be showing up. Who else is coming to the library meeting? And what explosive truth is about to be revealed? The next morning dawned grey and brittle, the kind of winter day where the cold felt hollow rather than sharp. I wrapped a wool scarf around my neck and stepped into the quiet streets of Red Cedar Hollow, heading toward Pinecrest Library with the brown folder tucked safely under my arm. Snow crunched beneath my boots, each step steady, deliberate. Today wasn't just a meeting. It was the pivot point of everything that had been building in silence. Harold's foresight, Lucas's betrayal, and my own awakening after years of swallowing my voice. When I reached the library steps, the old bricks glistened with frost. The entrance was already unlocked. Libraries opened early here. Wisdom didn't wait for warm weather. Inside, the community room lights glowed softly. Rows of chairs stood neatly arranged, and a long rectangular table sat in the center, waiting. But Lucas and Sabrina weren't the first ones there. Sitting quietly at the table, reviewing a stack of documents with precise, practiced movements, was Renee Calder, my attorney, the woman Harold had trusted with the supplemental will. She looked up the moment she heard my footsteps. "Mara," she greeted gently. "Are you ready?" "Yes," I said, placing the folder beside her. "More ready than I've ever been." Renee studied me with thoughtful eyes, the kind of gaze that measured not just the situation, but the person standing in it. "I'm here because this meeting will turn legal very quickly." Her voice dropped slightly. "And Lucas has no idea what's in these documents." I nodded once, steady. "He's about to." The door creaked open before she could say more. Lucas stepped inside first. He looked exhausted, eyes red, hair uncombed, face puffy with stress and sleeplessness. For a fleeting second, I saw a flash of the boy he used to be. The child who ran down the hall with muddy boots and scraped knees before. Adulthood hardened him into someone I barely recognized. Sabrina followed behind him, not nearly as shaken. Her expression was tight, defensive, chin tilted high as if she were walking into a courtroom rather than a library. She held her purse like a shield. Lucas froze when he saw Renee sitting beside me. "Mum, who is that?" he asked, voice cracking. "My attorney," I answered. A tremor ran through him. Sabrina's eyes narrowed. "An attorney? For what?" "For the truth," I said calmly. "It's long overdue." Renee stacked the documents neatly and gestured toward the chairs. "Please sit." They did, though reluctantly. The tension in the room throbbed like a heartbeat, steady, thick, impossible to ignore. Lucas leaned forward, elbows on the table. "Mum, we just need to talk about the payments." "We can work something out," Renee interjected smoothly. "This is not just about the mortgage." Sabrina's brows pinched. "Then what is it about?" "Your treatment of Mara," Renee replied, "and the legal consequences that follow." Lucas's face blanched. "Consequences? This is ridiculous." He reached for my hand across the table, but I pulled it back before he could touch me. The movement stopped him cold, his breath hitching in his throat. "Mum," he whispered. "Please, just listen." I listened that night, I said quietly. I listened when you said it wasn't my home. When you told me to leave. When you struck me. His jaw clenched, shame tightening every feature of his face. Sabrina scoffed under her breath. You're blowing this out of proportion. Renee opened the supplemental will. With all due respect, she said sharply. You have no idea what proportion we're dealing with. She slid the document across the table. Lucas stared at it without touching it, as if it might burn his fingers. What is this? He whispered. Your father's insurance policy, I replied. The one he left behind. For me. Renee read aloud. In the event that my son, Lucas Ellington, verbally abuses, physically harms, or forces my wife, Mara Ellington, from the family home, he forfeits all inheritance rights immediately. Lucas's face drained of color. Sabrina stiffened, her mouth opening slowly in disbelief. That can't be real. That can't be legal. It's both, Renee said firmly. Notarized, witnessed and filed years ago. Lucas swallowed hard, voice barely audible. Dad? Did this? Yes, I said. And he did it because he knew what you might become when grief blinded you. He looked at me with broken eyes. So, what happens now? I closed the folder with a soft final click. That depends, I said, on whether you're ready to hear the rest. Both of them froze because they didn't know the supplemental will was only the beginning. What deeper truth is hidden in the documents, and how will Lucas react when he learns the house may never be his again? The room felt colder after Renee read the clause aloud, as if every breath from Lucas and Sabrina had frozen mid-air. The fluorescent lights above hummed softly, but even that small sound seemed too loud for the silence that followed. Lucas stared at the document as though he were trying to force the words to rearrange themselves. His fingers twitched near the paper but never touched it. He swallowed hard. Dad wouldn't. He wouldn't do this. Renee folded her hands calmly. Your father drafted this himself. He was very clear. He wanted his wife protected. He loved you, I added gently. Enough to plan for a version of the future he prayed would never come. Sabrina scoffed, crossing her arms tightly. You expect us to believe this? That he magically predicted one argument years later? That's absurd. It wasn't an argument, I said quietly. It was an eviction. Lucas flinched. Renee leaned forward. And the law doesn't care about whether you were emotional. It cares about action. And we have the recording. He closed his eyes briefly. Pain flickered through every line of his face. After several moments, he whispered, What else is in there? His voice was so small it barely reached the table. Renee opened another folder, the one with Harold's neat handwriting on the front. This, she said, is the full estate directive. Sabrina let out a bitter laugh. Of course there's more. There is, Renee replied. And you'll want to hear it. She slid a sheet of paper across the table. Lucas stared at it but didn't touch it. His hands shook too much, Renee read. If my wife, Mara, is wronged, displaced, or harmed by my son in any way, the home and all attached assets will automatically transfer into a trust under Mara's exclusive control. No appeals. No conditions. The word exclusive echoed like a bell. Lucas's eyes widened. Trust? Renee nodded. Meaning even if you tried to challenge the will, the property would still belong to Mara alone. You have no legal standing. His breathing quickened, shallow and panicked. I recognized the sound. It was the way he used to breathe as a child when he woke from nightmares. Only now, he was waking into one he created. This can't be happening, he whispered. Mum, tell her this isn't what you want. Tell her you won't go through with it. I studied him for a moment. Really looked at him. At the fear. The shame, the disbelief. Lucas, I said slowly, I didn't come here for revenge. I came here because your father asked me to protect myself, and because you proved he was right to worry. His voice rose, cracking with panic. I said I was sorry. A bruise fades, I replied. But words? Words build walls or tear them down. You chose destruction. Sabrina leaned forward, eyes narrowed. So what now? You think you can just own everything? Kick us out the way you claim we did to you? Her tone sharpened on that final sentence, bitter and defensive. Renee spoke before I could. If Mrs. Ellington chooses to enforce the will fully, yes. The house would no longer be yours in any capacity. Lucas's head snapped up. He looked at me with complete devastation. You'd do that? To your own son? I felt the ache of that question. A deep, old ache. But I didn't flinch. You did it to me first. He blinked rapidly, as if the sting of those words reached deeper than any legal document ever could. Mom, he whispered. We made a mistake. We got overwhelmed. Sabrina thought. Don't blame me, Sabrina snapped. You acted on your own. That small betrayal cut through whatever composure Lucas had left. He stared at her, stunned. Then something inside him broke. His shoulders slumped. His forehead dropped into his hands. This is falling apart, he whispered. Everything is falling apart. I felt no triumph watching him collapse like that. Only the heavy realization that Harold had predicted this, not out of spite, but out of sorrow. Renee cleared her throat gently, pulling the moment back into focus. There's one more document. Both heads jerked upward. Sabrina's eyes narrowed. Another one? Yes. Renee pulled out a sealed envelope. This is a notarized letter from Harold, meant to be opened only when the supplemental will is activated. Lucas stared at it as though it were a detonator. What does it say? He whispered. Renee, tap the envelope. We'll open it together. Sabrina clenched her jaw. And what if we refuse? Renee looked at her steadily. Then you'll never know the final instruction your father-in-law left behind. Lucas's voice cracked again. Mom, please. What did Dad write? I reached for the envelope, my fingers, brushed the seal, and the room seemed to hold its breath. What did Harold write in his final sealed message, and how will it shatter what Lucas and Sabrina thought they knew? The sealed envelope felt heavier than paper should weigh. Its edges were worn from years of being untouched. Yet the seal remained unbroken, Harold's quiet proof that some truths wait for the exact moment they're needed. I placed it on the table. Lucas stared at it with a mix of fear and hope, as if whatever lay inside could either save him or destroy the last piece of the life he thought he controlled. Sabrina sat rigid beside him, mask-like calm fading into thin cracks around her eyes. Renee nodded gently. Go ahead, Mara. With steady fingers, I slipped a nail beneath the seal and tore it open. The room felt colder instantly, like the ghost of Harold himself had stepped in to witness this. I unfolded the letter. The familiar handwriting swept across the page. Firm, deliberate, unmistakably his. I held the letter where everyone could see and began reading aloud. To my wife, Mara, and to my son, Lucas, and to whoever else sits at this table when this letter is opened. Lucas straightened, breath caught in his throat. If you are reading this, then the contingency I prayed would never unfold has come to pass. Sabrina shifted uneasily. Lucas, my boy, I loved you enough to see your flaws, not ignore them. I saw the way frustration twisted your temper. I saw the way pride sometimes pulled you away from humility. Lucas's eyes glossed over. And I saw the way you let others shape your behavior when you should have been leading with kindness. He looked, briefly, at Sabrina. She didn't meet his eyes. Renee nodded for me to continue. Your mother gave everything she had to this family. Not loudly. Not for recognition. Quietly, in the ways that truly matter, the ways that hold a home together, even when the walls shake. My throat tightened, but I kept reading. If you ever forget her worth, then you have forgotten mine too. Lucas covered his mouth with his hand. Sabrina looked away. I continued, my voice steadier than my heart. This house exists because of her sacrifices, her labor, her patience. If she has been pushed aside, mistreated, or threatened in any way, then the home rightly returns to her alone. Lucas whispered, Dad. No. But the letter wasn't finished. The supplemental will ensures she cannot be removed from the home she built with her own hands. And if she chooses to leave it by her own decision, then it ceases to be yours, Lucas. You cannot inherit what you tried to force her out of. Sabrina's face drained of all color. Lucas shook his head, clutching his hair. I didn't think she'd actually, Dad, please. I swallowed hard and read the final paragraph. Mara, if you're deciding what to do next, choose the path that gives you peace, not guilt. You've carried enough for all of us. And if our son has learned from this moment, then mercy is yours to offer. But you owe him nothing. The letter ended there. A long, brutal silence followed. Lucas broke first. He bent forward, elbows on his knees, fingers digging into his hair as tears slid down his face. I ruined everything, he whispered. Dad trusted me, and I ruined everything. For a moment I saw the child in him again. Lost. Hurting. Human. But pain doesn't undo harm, and regret doesn't erase what was done. Sabrina stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. This is insane. You're both insane if you think this changes anything. That house should have been ours. Renee raised a calm but sharp hand. Mrs. Ellington, the law is not influenced by what you feel you deserve. Sabrina glared at Lucas. You said this would never be a problem. You said your mom didn't matter in the paperwork. Lucas didn't defend himself. Didn't look up. Didn't speak. I finally broke the silence. Lucas. He lifted his head slowly, eyes swollen and red. I don't want your suffering, I said gently. I want your understanding. That's all I've ever wanted. He whispered, I understand now. But it's too late, isn't it? I didn't answer immediately, because the truth hung in the air like a blade. Yes. For the house. It was too late, but for us. For a mother and son crushed under the weight of mistakes. That answer was still uncertain. Sabrina scoffed. So what now? You take the house? Leave us homeless? That's your big victory. I met her glare without flinching. My victory, I said softly, is choosing what happens next. Sabrina opened her mouth to argue, but Lucas suddenly stood, trembling. Mom, please tell us what you're going to do. I exhaled. Slowly, the decision had already been made, and they weren't ready for it. What shocking choice has Mara made, and how will it change everything for Lucas and Sabrina? The library room felt unbearably still after Lucas asked the question. What are you going to do? The desperation in his voice clung to the cold air, trembling like a thread stretched too far. I looked at my son, the boy I raised, the man who had wounded me, the person now crushed beneath the weight of his own choices. His eyes were red and swollen, the rawness of regret carving into every line of his face. Beside him, Sabrina stood rigid, jaw clenched, hands white-knuckled on the back of her chair. Her gaze moved between Lucas, Renee, and me with thinly veiled fear and indignation. Renee waited silently, allowing the moment to breathe. Knowing whatever came next would be more than legal, it would be permanent. I drew a slow breath. My choice, I began, is not what you think. Lucas swallowed. You're going to take the house. No, I said. Sabrina blinked. What? I'm not keeping the Ellington homestead. The shock on Lucas's face was instant, wide-eyed, stunned disbelief. Sabrina's expression flickered with something closer to hope. I continued before either could interrupt. But I'm also not giving it to either of you. That hope died immediately. What does that mean? Lucas whispered, voice fragile. Renee glanced at him, then nodded for me to continue. I placed both hands on the brown folder, the one that had become a symbol of past sacrifices and untold truths. Your father and I built that home, I said softly. We paid for it with long nights and short paychecks, with patched roofs, scraped floors, and dreams bigger than our pockets. Lucas lowered his head. And then, I continued, you told me it wasn't mine, that I needed to leave, that I didn't belong in the place I spent my entire life protecting. His shoulders shook. I looked directly at him. But I refused to turn that house into a battlefield between us. I won't spend the rest of my days walking through halls soaked with bitterness. So what then? Sabrina snapped. You're just going to let it rot? Let the bank take it? I turned to her, calm and unwavering. No, I sold it. Both of them froze. The air itself seemed to collapse. Lucas blinked rapidly. You sold it? Yes, yesterday. To who? Sabrina demanded, her voice cracking. Who would even buy that place on such short notice? The Hearthstone Haven Initiative, I said. A non-profit that converts unused or unsafe properties into transitional homes for displaced senior women. Sabrina recoiled as if the name itself slapped her. You sold it to a charity? I sold it, I said firmly, to people who will fill it with the kindness and safety I no longer found there. Lucas stared at me, stunned into silence. His lips parted soundlessly as if he were trying to form words but couldn't quite grasp any. But, Mom, his voice wobbled. It was never yours, I said softly. Not legally, not morally, not after the way I was treated. The truth hit him like a blow. He bowed his head, face crumpling. Sabrina took a step back, shaking her head in disbelief. So that's it? You're just letting that house slip through generations? For strangers? Not strangers, I corrected. Women who have been silenced, overlooked, or cast aside. Women who know what it feels like to be pushed out of their own lives. I turned my palms upward. That home will finally be what it should have always been, a place of refuge. Not a stage for cruelty. Renee spoke then, her voice carrying quiet finality. The sale is already finalized. Funds transferred. Deed reassigned. There is no reversing it. Sabrina let out a strangled sound of disbelief and fury. You ruined everything. Lucas lifted his head sharply. No, he rasped, looking directly at her for the first time. We ruined everything. It was the first thing he'd said that sounded like truth. I exhaled, feeling the weight I'd carried for years loosen at last. I don't want revenge, I said. I want peace. And for the first time in a long while, I have it. Lucas's voice broke. Mom, what happens to us now? It was the question he feared most. I stood slowly, gathering the folder into my arms. That depends, I said quietly, on what you choose to learn from this. But as I turned toward the door, I felt eyes burning into my back, Sabrina's, filled with fury. Because she knew. The house was gone. The power was gone. And now the consequences were coming. What consequences will come in? Sabrina face? And can Lucas salvage anything after losing everything he took for granted? When I stepped out of the library into the brittle winter air, the world felt strangely quiet, like fresh snow had fallen over every sound, leaving only breath and memory behind. Renee walked beside me, her boots crunching softly on the frozen sidewalk. "You handled yourself with more grace than most people ever could," she said. "I wasn't graceful," I replied. "I was tired." "There's a difference." She smiled gently. "You earned that peace, Mara." Peace. The word felt unfamiliar, but not unwelcome. We parted ways at the corner. I watched her disappear through the drifting snow before turning toward Bridgecrest Apartments. My steps felt lighter than they had in years, lighter than they ever had living under the same roof with people who believed. Kindness was optional, but I hadn't made it 3 blocks before I heard hurried footsteps behind me. "Mom, wait," Lucas's voice. I stopped but didn't turn. My breath clouded the air, swirling upward like ghosts searching for their way home. He reached me breathlessly, chest heaving from running. "Mom," he said again, softer now. I turned slowly, taking in the sight of him. His face was blotchy from crying, his posture bent inward like someone who had finally realized how much damage he'd done by standing tall in all the wrong moments. Sabrina was nowhere in sight. He followed my gaze and shook his head. "She left. She said she wasn't staying for this." I nodded once. I wasn't surprised. "Mara," he continued, voice trembling, "I don't care about the house anymore. Not after today. I don't care about the inheritance, the ownership, none of it. His breath shook. "I just want to know if there's anything left between us." The wind brushed snow between us like a fragile veil. "Lucas," I said gently, "you hurt me. Not just that night. For years. With silences. With dismissals. With the belief that I didn't matter in my own home." His eyes lowered. I know I treated you like you were. In the way. And you never were." We stood there, the winter world waiting for what came next. "I'm not asking you to forget," he added quickly. "I'm just asking for a chance. A real one. Not to make things the way they were." He paused, struggling for breath. "But to make things better than they were." The sincerity cracked something in me, not breaking, but loosening. Like a knot finally giving way after years of tightening. I studied him quietly. "I can forgive you," I said at last. "But forgiveness doesn't mean trust returns overnight. Trust is a garden. It grows if you care for it, and dies if you don't." He nodded, tears streaking downward. "I'll water it. Every day. I promise." For the first time in a long, long while, I believed him, not because he said it, but because he finally understood the cost of not meaning it. He stepped closer, hesitated, then asked in a broken whisper, "Can I hug you?" I considered the question, the years, the wounds. The letter Harold left, all of it folding into one quiet moment. "Yes," I said. Lucas wrapped his arms around me, sobbing into my shoulder, not like a child, but like a man finally learning humility. I held him gently, not tightly, because healing doesn't happen in a cage. It happens with room to breathe. When he pulled away, his eyes were clearer. "I love you, Mum," he said. "I love you too," I replied. "But love isn't enough unless it is lived." He nodded. "I'll live it." We parted at the intersection. He walked toward whatever future he had left to rebuild. And I walked toward mine, lighter, freer, and unburdened by the ghosts of Willowben Road. A week later, I stood on the wooden porch of my new cabin overlooking Mirrorstone Lake, morning mist curling off the water like silver thread. My coffee steamed in my hands as a soft wind fluttered through the pines. The cabin was small, sturdy, quiet, everything I needed. Inside, my desk waited with a new recorder, a simple black device. I pressed the button. "Entry 1, I said softly. Mara Ellington finding her voice. I spoke about what I'd learned. That silence wasn't weakness, but a slow gathering of strength. That peace wasn't given, it was claimed. And that sometimes the greatest love you can show, someone is letting them face the consequences of their own choices." I ended the recording with words Harold once said to me. "The world doesn't get to decide your worth. You do." I turned off the recorder and sat in the stillness of my new home as sunlight spread across the snow. I had lost a house, but I had gained a world, and this time it belonged entirely to me. If you like my story, please like this video, subscribe channel and comment below what kind of story you like this. I will find for you real stories.